Shalom, shalom. First, I'd like to give all praises unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Waharakah Kadash, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. And I want to talk about these 42 so-called laws, which really they're 42 negative confessions. But, the Egyptologists like to tell you, the Negro Egyptologist will tell you it's a law. It's not a law. It's a negative confession for the afterlife. But talk about these laws and this claim that the Bible, like the law of the Most High that Moses scribed, is from Egypt, which is madness. All right. Now, one thing we have to understand is that you are going to see certain things which is in our law in other cultures, and the reason is because the laws that we have were, in a way, some of them were oral previously, like murder. All right. The idea that murder should be a law didn't start with Moses, because we can see quite clearly here in Genesis, the 9th chapter, which is before Moses. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it. And at the hand of man, and at the hand of every man's brother, will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. And this is during the time of Noah. So it would stand to reason that peoples that come from Noah might have a version or might have this within their culture to a degree, some more than others. The point is that the law that Moses received was a perfect law, uncorrupted. A perfect law, uncorrupted. With all the details, the laws, statutes, and commandments. No other nation had that. No other nation had a perfect law, a complete law. In fact, if you go after the way of these other nations, you will break that perfect and complete law. Hence, we were told to not follow after the ways of the heathens. Because if the ways of the heathens were so harmonious with our way, then what would be the problem then? It would be the same, wouldn't it? Why wouldn't we be able to be like the Egyptians if we got our laws from the Egyptians? Then we should just be like the Egyptians then, shouldn't we? It is specifically said to not do the things that the Egyptians do. Because what were the Egyptians doing? All form of manner of uncleanliness. All manner of uncleanliness, man. And wicked sacrifices. And odious works, like having sex with alligators. All right? And having sex with their mothers. And all kind of madness. Right? Leviticus 18:3. After the doings of the land of Egypt. The doings is what they were doing. Wherein ye dwelt shall ye not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, because they too were idolaters and had a corrupt way. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do, neither shall ye walk in their ordinances. Now, what's an ordinance? Let's get the interlinear. Their ordinances. That's their laws. All right? They ain't right. Ordinances, statute, ordinance, limit, enactment, something prescribed. Right? Don't do their laws. But these men will tell you that our laws came from Egypt. When in our law it says, don't do the laws that they have in Egypt. Don't follow their ways. Ye shall do my judgments and keep mine ordinances to walk therein. I am the Lord your God, and we have our laws in great detail. A detail that doesn't exist for the Egyptologists today, because their law is trash. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. I am the Lord. And then it goes on to list all the manner of madness like Batimanism. Batimanism wasn't outlawed in Egypt. The man were Batiman, the man were dealing with all kind of mad incest. animals, bestiality, now sacrifice. You know, the Canaanites were heavy into that sacrifice too. All right, lesbianism. Right, they would defile a defiled and corrupt people, and the scripture says, "Don't follow them." Now, let's deal with these negative confessions of Ma'at. All right. Now, what this comes from is the Book of the Dead. Now, the Book of the Dead is a cheat code for the afterlife. It's a guide for the afterlife, which we don't believe in. We don't believe in the afterlife in the way the Egyptians have the afterlife at all, in any way, shape, or form. There's no affinity with how the scriptures deal with what happens when you die, according to the way the Egyptians deal with what happens when you die. They're on a whole different form of LSD trip. Okay. Now I'm gonna read this because it's going into all this madness, and this is why they would leave the heart in the body and take out organs and all this madness, mummification, all this crazy stuff, man, which we never did because we didn't copy Egypt. We, the heart was placed on a scale in a balance against the white feather of truth, and if it was found to be lighter, one went on toward paradise. If it was heavier, it was dropped onto the floor, where it was eaten by the monster Amut, and the soul then ceased to exist. Yeah, we don't deal with all that. Prior to this final judgment and one's reward or punishment, which again, in the Holy Scriptures, we don't have no heaven or hell. That's pagan philosophy. Pagan. That's not in the Scriptures. Oh, okay, there's a final reward and a final punishment. Like, no. There's just the law, statutes, and commandments. And the curses. All the judgments are on earth. Osiris, Thoth, and Anubis would confer with the 42 judges. We don't have no 42 judges in our thing. Yeah? This would be the point at which allowances might be made. The 42 judges represented the spiritual aspects of the 42 districts of ancient Egypt, and it is thought that each of the confessions addressed a certain kind of sin which would have been particularly offensive in a specific nome. So this wasn't a universal law for all peoples of Egypt. This just might have been a thing where over here they don't like this, or over here they don't like that. All right? If the judges felt that one had been more virtuous than not, it was recommended that the soul be justified and allowed to pass on. The details of what happened next vary from era to era. Again, bare confusion. You don't get that. We got one law, one record. In some periods, the soul would have to navigate certain dangers and traps to reach paradise, while in others, one simply walked on a lily lake after judgment. And you see, so this is all the confusion that comes with Egyptology, okay? All right. And after a final test was taken across to paradise, once there, the soul would enjoy an eternity in a world which perfectly reflected one's life on earth. Everything one thought had been lost would be returned, and souls would live in peace, and blah, 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 blah. Before one could reach his paradise, however, the negative confession had to be accepted by the gods, and this meant one had to be able to sincerely mean what was said. So you had to make some negative confession. Now let's get some understanding here. There is no standard negative confession. Let me read that again. These weren't laws. There is no standard negative confession. The confession from the Papyrus of Ani is the best known only because the text is so famous and so often reproduced. So that's why they always keep referring to the 42 negative confessions, because it's the most famous version, but it's not a standard. So how do you even know that Moses even heard of this thing? When did it come from and what time? See, this wasn't a standard across all time in Egypt. And as I just explained, these confessions weren't even standard to each region. One region might have one thing. Come on, this is BS, man. The sins which are listed varied from text to text. For example, in the Papyrus of Ani, confession number 15 is, "I am not a man of deceit," whilst it is, "I have no commanded to kill in another. I have not been contentious in affairs." And often, what? I have not been contentious in affairs. I have not been contentious in affairs. Any officer in the military would not be able to honestly claim I have not be commanded to kill, nor would a judge or a king or so sin would be left off their confession. So as you can see, it wasn't a law of Egypt, because how could it be a law of Egypt that you don't command to kill someone when obviously if you're a king or you're a judge, you do make a command to kill. So do you see what I'm saying here? These are not laws, right? I have not commanded to kill, nor would judge a judge or a king, or so that sin would have be left off their confession. This was not weighing the confession in the deceased's favor so much as ensuring one did not condemn oneself by speaking falsely. The heart would still be weighed in the balances after all, and any deceit would be known. The soul was therefore provided with a list it could speak truthfully in front of the gods instead of a standard inventory of sins everyone would have to recite. So each man would just pick a thing that he think he could say to make it into the afterlife, and that's it. It's BS. It's absolute BS. Let's keep going. I got more. No doubt. So it says, right, the Book of the Dead. Says, this is where it comes from. The Book of the Dead, ancient Egyptian collection of mortuary texts made up of spells or magic formulas placed in tombs and believed to protect and aid the deceased in the hereafter. Probably compiled and re-edited during the 16th century BCE, the collection included coffin texts dating from 2000, pyramid texts, and other writings. Later compilations included hymns to Ra or Re, the sun god. Numerous authors, compilers, and sources contributed to the work. So this was like an ongoing thing. It's different stuff, right? Now, where did I want to get? Because it's just pure all madness, and it all changes. Just like with these gods, the stories of these gods and which god was prominent all change from dynasty to dynasty and from region to region. There was not much standard. So anyone that's putting forward a standard to you today has had to ignore other versions. It's confusion. Was there a bit in this I needed to read? Hold on. Oh yeah, that was pretty much it, because sometimes you find the negative convictions along with the Book of the Dead. I believe it's in like the 125th spell. You find confessions in there. All right, but this is all confusion and BS, and it's got nothing to do with the Bible. 1 second, let me get the next one. So Egyptian law, right? Egyptian law, the law that originated with the unification of the Upper and Lower Egypt under King Menes, 2925 BC, and grew and developed until the Roman occupation of Egypt in 30 BC. The history of Egyptian law is longer than that of any other civilization. Even after the Roman occupation, elements of Egyptian law were retained outside the major urban areas. No formal Egyptian code of law has been preserved. Let me read that again. No formal Egyptian code of law has been preserved. Yeah, unlike the law of the Bible. Although several pharaohs, such as Bacchus, were known as lawgivers. After the 7th century BC, however, when the Demotic language, the popular form of written language, came into use, many legal transactions required written deeds or contracts instead of traditional oral agreement, and these extant documents have been studied for what they reveal of the law of ancient Egypt. The ultimate authority in the settlement of disputes was the pharaoh, whose decrees were supreme because of the complex nature of legal administration. The pharaoh delegated powers to provincial governors and officials. Blah 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 blah. You get the point here. All right. Yeah, certain property laws and certain things like that. Uh, but the actual law hasn't been found. They've just found pieces of court documents, and that's it. So, yeah, to hell with Egypt, man. Okay, and here's an example of what was happening in Egypt, which is against in our law: the sacred prostitution or temporal prostitution, cult prostitution or religious prostitution, right? And that was happening in ancient Egypt. All right, all over they were doing that. Sumer, Babylonia. We specifically didn't do that. the Phoenicians, right? But in the Hebrew Bible, it says don't do that. All right. So this is Deuteronomy, the 4th chapter, right? And we will get from verse 5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded thee, that you should do so in the land whither you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. Because none of the nations had a perfect law as we had, because our law was given to us by direct inspiration from the Most High. There was no corruption. It was a perfect law to be established. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear of all these statutes, and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? Because the Most High himself actually provided us with this law. It wasn't from Egypt. Egypt is confusion. Egypt is a big ball of confusion. That's what it is. Their idols are confusion, right? There is no complete and defined standard even of their idols, because it changed over time. This city might have a different idol being higher than another idol. They'll have different idols as being the creator. It's confusion. Different laws, goofiness. And like I said, why would we take our law from a people that in our law says don't follow their law? It makes no sense. All right. And what nation is there so great that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I have set before you this day? None. The laws of Yahweh Hashem Yeshai cannot be found in no other nation. You got to look at the law in its entirety. The law was given to us in its entirety, not one law. It wasn't just 10 laws. The whole law was given to us in its entirety, with laws, statutes, and commandments, judgments. Perfect. So to hell with these Egyptians and this stupid 42 negative confession crap. Get out of here, man. All right.